Hey guys, welcome to another Purple Political Talk live stream. I'm Purple Political Talk for those that don't know me. Um, I guess you guys should know me. And with me is longtime friend of the channel, my right hand man, I guess when you talk about YouTube, my good friend UEP. UEP, how are you today?
I am good. How about you?
I'm doing well. Before we start the live stream, and I know that these live streams are usually something that's very upbeat, where you just chill, talk. I did want to bring out something, and just do a little bit of a in memoriam for Senator Mike Enzi, who sadly passed away today. That was like some news that I was really shocked. I heard about his accident, and I was shocked because he had just retired last year, and yeah, it was like a little bit tough. And I think that everyone, if you agreed with him or not, you could say he was a consequential figure in government. Even though UEP doesn't really recognize his state, I think that after this circumstance, he will.
Yeah, well, I know I've made the Wyoming joke a couple of times, but now's not really a good time for jokes, and I think we should keep
Right.
respectful in the chat. Even if you didn't agree with Senator Enzi's votes or views, I think it's worth commemorating him. He lived a good life. He served in Congress for multiple decades. He died at 77 in a biking accident, tragically, and it's very unfortunate that he died, and we're very just remembering him today for that.
Right. I think that something that I've been seeing a lot on Twitter, where a lot of people that disagree with him politically were ripping him to shreds, and I think that's not okay. So, keep the positive environment. So, in a way, this is kind of a in memoriam for Senator Mike Enzi, who sadly passed away today. So, I hope you guys can stay positive in the chat. And perfect. Actually, let me fix my glasses. There we go. So today's live stream, we're going to be discussing a lot of different things, and I love having UEP because because we usually have political conversations off the channel, and they're very interesting how like the turns they take and stuff. So it's always fun to have like also the added factor of UEP along with you guys in the chat. We're going to be taking questions. We're going to be doing a lot of different things, and we're pretty much kind of gonna see where the conversation pretty much takes us. So, UP, are you ready to start?
Yeah, I'm ready to start. Although before we start, I do want to say thank you to Matthew Tower for reminding me we have a runoff in Texas tonight in a congressional election between two Republicans. Not really anything important, but right now Jake Elzy, is currently leading Susan Wright. If anyone remembers from that May 1st special election in Texas right now, that's going on. So we're going to talk about that for a bit as well.
Right, we're gonna be kind of talking about those results, as well. So I think that of course, those races are somewhat important. I mean, it's in a pretty Republican district, and it's two Republicans running, so that's really not going to be as impactful, I guess. However, I will make sure that we do our best to cover that, and we're going to be talking about other things as well. So the first thing I do want to talk about is, I wanted to talk a little about, and I think that me and UEP were having a conversation yesterday about the economy and where I think the economy is actually headed. So I wanted to start by that and actually talk a little bit about how the current situation with the economy might lead to the Democrats, falling in. And before we get started, I want to make a couple points, and then UP, of course, is going to be chipping, right? So one of the things that I want to say is that, in a way, I think that 2020 was very bad dealing of cards for the Democratic Party. I mean, they won the Senate very narrowly. They kept a very narrow majority in the House, and they won the White House. But long term, I think we're going to see how it's really going to be somewhat more of a negative. I think that for the Democrats moving forward, a lot of the momentum that a lot of people expected them to have, we've seen predictions and projections that show Democrats having, these insane numbers moving forward. I do think that the way the 2020 election played out, with them winning very narrowly and things like that, it's going to affect them in the future, because Biden is probably going to end up being a one-term president, just based on if he doesn't even run again, if he, all these different factors. I think that the economy is not going to be well until before we get to the midterms, and I'm going to talk about that later. UEP, what do you think about this?
Yeah, so like you said, the Democrats are kind of in a really sticky situation, and I talked with this on Twitter. By the way, go follow both of us on Twitter. I'll take this moment to shamelessly plug our Twitters. I'm at UEP YouTube. He is at PPT YouTube. Go follow both of us. So what I said the other day on Twitter was, and as we saw, we'll talk about this as well. The CDC released new guidelines for coronavirus, essentially saying vaccinated people now have to wear their masks indoors. Which I'll talk about that in a second. But the Democrats are in a situation where if coronavirus gets better, that's neutral for them. Because look, I mean, Purple and I believe that if coronavirus didn't happen, Trump would have won the election. I think a majority of us do, even if we are Democrats. And I think COVID was what handed the election to Democrats. I think without COVID, Trump would still be president. The Republicans still have a narrow Senate majority, and maybe the House would be in Republican control. I mean, after seeing how close they came in 2020, it's very, very possible the House would still be in Republican control. Now, on the flip side, if what we're seeing right now is if the Democrats and Joe Biden continue the not normal, the masks inside, even if you're vaccinated, restaurants not being at full capacity, shutdowns in some cases, that's not good for them. And that's going to result in a very, very bad performance for them in 2022 midterms, because in the eyes of most voters, they had one job. And if we're still wearing masks 6 months from now, and if we're still social distancing 6 months from now, and if we're not to some sense of normal in 6 months from now, I cannot even begin to describe the red wave we're going to see in 2022.
Right. And I think that when we look back into 2020 and we see politicians always make promises, right? That's something that goes without saying. I think that Biden was a little bit sneaky and actually very smart in the way that he ran his campaign in 2020. He pretty much ran solely on the point that COVID would improve. And I think truly at the end of the day, that's something that's a very good message to run on, especially when, the whole country is in this huge crisis, right? So now, what UEP is saying about COVID is true. Now, since that was the only thing he really did come out and outright promise that COVID-19 was going to get better, if we're not out of the tunnel in the next 6 to 8 months, when we start getting closer to primary season for the 2022 midterms, I can't begin to, one, see how bad establishment Democrats are going to do nationwide. And then with that, you have the attachment that, more progressive Democrats probably are going to win primaries, which I think in long term, it could win them in certain districts, for example. But there's certain districts that do not like, the socialist Democrats, the more leftward side of
Nebraska 2nd district.
Right. So if that ends up being the case where Biden cannot keep his only promise, I think we're going to end up seeing a very big, I guess, effect in that way.
Yeah, you're right about that, and I'll just briefly interject. Another minor problem, I don't know if you caught this, but Biden's campaign, he kind of said, we're going to, and this isn't exclusively a Biden thing, I guess, but his campaign slogan was to restore the soul of America, to restore decency to America, to make us feel less divided. He always talked about, there are no blue states and red states, they're the United States. And that's obviously political rhetoric. I guarantee you that every politician in Washington will say that just to get votes. It's not exclusively a Biden thing. But we're still as divided as we were a year ago. We are still a very, very divided country. And I hate to say it, I know per political talk hates to say it, we're still a very divided country. And, the more that continues, the higher the floors are in the midterms for each party. Because, 20 years ago, Democrats were winning governor races in Oklahoma, and they were winning Senate races in Alabama. 20 years ago, the Republican, even in 2009, there was a Republican governor in California. And polarization has become so extreme that every race is essentially within 5 points, with a couple exceptions, like, maybe in Massachusetts or Kansas or Kentucky. But other than that, polarization has gotten so extreme that no matter how bad one party messes up, they're still going to have a base of a lot of seats. And that's a bad thing, because a party can go completely crazy and they're still going to have a ton of seats. And I think long term, it's a really scary thing. And I think that short term, people realize this and they don't like it. And I think that's going to backfire on Joe Biden because he is in power right now.
Right. And I think that most of this is just a result of our current two-party system. Matthew was saying that it creates a lot of these problems that we have. And, one of the things I really am confident about is that our country is a coalition government stuck in two parties. There is no real coalitions, but we know they're there. And what ends up happening with these coalitions, they're going to end up, dividing the country. That's what's happening. We're living in a coalition type government. It's just that we are not seeing it. I think it's just easier for everyone just to make these two coalitions out of and make them the standard. The moderate Democrats are, and they span so much on the political spectrum. So in a way, we're really living in that coalition type government. And I think to a certain point, since we do not know that, it's something that's a little bit dangerous for our country.
Yeah, and this is another thing that we talked about. So when we were planning this live stream, we were on the phone last night and we were just talking about politics, and we talked about, like you said, how we are in a coalition type government. And to elaborate on that, that's basically, and I guess the best comparison is Britain. Because Britain, you have a couple major parties. You have Labour, which is basically the Democrats. You have the Conservatives, who are basically the Republicans. And then you have the Liberal Democrats, who are more progressive. The Scottish National Party, which is kind of more populist, independence, nationalist party, I guess. I'm not great at describing it. It's probably the party I know the least about. And then you have different factions of, the Labour Party. You have what Welsh Labour is different than English Labour because they're in different regions of the country. So, it really differs. And, this is an interesting factoid. State parties can be very interesting. For example, the Rhode Island Democratic Party their platform is pro-life. That is super random. I know it's super obscure. It's only a small state in the Northeast, but it's still important to realize that there are differences between a Democrat in Rhode Island and a Democrat in California. There are differences between a Democrat from, to bring up the primary coming up in Ohio's 11th district between Nina Turner and Shontel Brown. There are differences between Democrats all across the spectrum, and Republicans too, but I think more Democrats because of how broad their party is. Democrats are a larger party, and that's great for them, but the disadvantage is that they have so many factions that they're divided every election cycle. The GOP is divided right now, but they haven't been this divided in a very, very long time.
Right. And I've talked to UEP about this, and I've also said this in many of my videos. It is my belief that right now the Democratic Party is in disarray politically. They're blowing races they should not be blowing. I mean, take a look at the 2020 Senate races, and I was shocked when I saw some of the results. Who would have thought that Suzanne Collins was going to lose to a strong Democrat? And I guess I say strong with quotation marks. Someone like a Sarah Gideon. And there's races that they completely blew. And that is one of the most mind-boggling races, in my opinion. But that kind of just shows how, the Democratic Party, they have these strong candidates. They're running the people they need to run in a lot of races. But sometimes it's just the big party platform that they're not organized that really loses them elections. And I think this is something that has really helped out the Republicans in the last couple of years. They are not divided. Going back to 2016, I think that's one of the big things that cost the Democrats the election. They were completely in disarray. They were a little bit more united than I think they are now, but they were still in disarray. So it's just a lot of disorganization. And that's also why Biden has not been able to get anything big and substantial done other than COVID-19 checks, because that was already in the works since Trump's presidency. I mean, he's trying to get this infrastructure built through. It's not happening. Why? Because there's just so much gridlock because the Democrats are just so different. And I think it's that organization thing that really ends up hurting them in certain ways.
You're right about that, and I think there are two things you need to bring up. But first, I'm going to disagree with you on one thing. It's not for certain whether the infrastructure bill is going to be passed, but I'd say that there's like a 50 to 60% chance of it being passed. It's gotten bipartisan support, and the Democrats have the ability to run it through budget reconciliation. So I think that's a hot mess we can talk about later. But to get back to the point you made earlier that I think is more important for this conversation is that you said that every year Democrats kind of blow winnable races, and I totally agree with you. The Republicans have had their fair share of chokes. The Georgia runoffs, they should have won those races by 5 points each. But the Democrats, every year they find a way to bungle a race that they should be winning. And it's, I'm a sports fan, and for those of you who watch the NFL, the Democrats, and I made this comparison to my friends who watch football, the Democrats in some ways are the Detroit Lions. And I know most of you guys aren't huge fans of football, but the Lions are inept at winning important games. And it's especially in Purple's home state of Florida. The Democrats have not won an important Senate race since 2012. That's the last time they actually did well in Florida. And in 2018, Bill Nelson lost a super winnable race in a blue wave year that he should have won by 5 points. He lost it. In 2020, Joe Biden had a pretty easy campaign to run. He's a moderate. Everyone knows that, and he still managed to lose Hispanic, or to only win Hispanics by, I think, a couple of points. And he ran like 20 points, I think 23 points behind Hillary Clinton in Miami-Dade, 8 points behind her in Palm Beach, and 5 points behind her in Broward. So Florida Democrats have been very bad at winning elections for, the past 8 years since Obama, really. And in 2020, they also blew some other races that weren't even in Florida. In Maine, like you said, they lost a very winnable Senate race. All they had to do was run a decent campaign. Sarah Gideon managed to alienate the voters of Maine, and she lost essentially every moderate Democrat who lives in Maine, and she lost that race by 8%, which was an embarrassing showing for her. Cal Cunningham, I do believe that if he didn't have that scandal, he would have won that race. Not for sure, though. Not he lost it by 2 points. North Carolina is a really close state, but he could have won that. If Steve Bullock had much better messaging in Montana, he might not have won, but he would have maybe only lost by a lean margin instead of a 10-point blowout. Same with Iowa. Teresa Greenfield tied herself to the Democrats nationally, and that hurt her in a state that's trending away from Democrats. She could have easily won that race. She had better messaging and more populist messaging. So the Democrats blow many races every year, and I think we can talk a lot about this, and it's an interesting topic.
Right, and I think it's not to say that the Republicans don't blow races, because they've in the past, but I just think the frequency of how big it happens is not as bad as the Democrats. I mean, technically speaking, the Democrats should have a pretty much, I would say, a 6-seat majority in the Senate. They should have a bigger majority in the House based on how we see popular vote numbers, how we see different things. Yeah, I get everything about the popular vote, and it's not the same districts or whatever. I do get that, but they should definitely be winning by a lot more than they are, and it just comes to disorganization. And I think what mostly attributes to that is that the Democrats have this thing that they do where, let's suppose that one year they do great with Latinos, they blow out with Latinos. The next year they saw that they didn't perform as well with African American voters. The next election season they're going to focus on African American voters, but they're going to forget about Latinos, and they keep on going in that pattern. That's how we got 2016 Hillary Clinton losing in the Rust Belt. That's how we saw states like Texas, where it could have been a lot closer, and Florida completely blown away for Joe Biden in 2020. And I think moving forward, there's certain groups of voters that are going to be forgotten by the Democrats because it's just a pattern they've done.
Right, and I just want to address the chat because I do see Matthew Tower says Greenfield didn't have a shot of ousting Ernst in a Trump plus 8 state. I actually disagree. So yes, Trump did win Iowa by 8, but let's think about this for a second. First of all, neither Purple or I anticipated Trump winning Iowa by 8. I think Purple had him winning it by, actually, how much did you have Trump winning Iowa by? Just tell us.
I think it was 6 points.
Yeah, so 6, that's, 6, and that's more bullish than I had Trump winning it by 3 or 4. So Iowa was less close than we expected, first of all. Second, Iowa's an independent state. This doesn't really count, but in 2018, the Democratic state auditor, I believe, won re-election by a massive amount. The Republicans didn't run anyone. They were only, a libertarian ran, but he still won, and that means that there are still a lot of Iowa Republicans who are okay with voting Democrat. And, a better example is in 2018. The Democrats won the House popular vote in Iowa by 4%, and they won 3 of 4 seats. Now, they lost those in 2020, but they won. In 2018, they did win the popular vote by 4% in Iowa. Now, I'm not saying that, Trump shouldn't have won Iowa. I think all of us were expecting it to happen, but Greenfield, if she ran as a populist and independent Democrat against Joni Ernst, who's not that popular of an incumbent, by the way. At one point, she was in the bottom 5 approval ratings in Morning Consult. She was not popular for a bit of time in 2020. I think if Greenfield had ran a better campaign, I think she would have maybe not won because she did still lose by 5 or 6, but I think that she would have definitely lost by under 2 and potentially won. So the Democrats, and Greenfield didn't have to win to help the Democrats in Iowa. She could have boosted Abby Finkenauer, who lost a winnable House. She could have boosted Rita Hart, who lost race by 6 votes. 6 votes. Think about that. If the Democrats had done 7 votes better in that district, they would have won another seat in the House. So when people say that races don't matter, the Democrats can't win certain races, they can. It's always important to run good candidates. And I think that for that reason, I think, Greenfield could have done a lot better.
Right. And I do think that in a way that sometimes we forget, especially in in presidential years, how really the down ballot races are different things. But I do think that in a way, I was one of the people, very few people, who thought that Trump was being underestimated. And I made a couple videos about the quote unquote silent majority and stuff. And I did think that Donald Trump was going to have a lot more support, and he was definitely underestimated in 2020. He was underestimated, but he blew the election. I think that if he had just done 1% better, I did a video about this today, he would have won the race. He blew it away because he did not want to wear a mask. And look, politics, it's about perception. It doesn't matter if you don't really believe what you're saying, but as long as you can make it perceive what's popular, you're going to win races. And unfortunately for us, politicians lie all the time. Donald Trump was not able to lie enough to win his race. He completely blew the race, and I think he had a very strong chance of winning that election. COVID ended up being the tripping factor where he pretty much completely tripped up, and it was horrible for him. So that's why I think like something that's really gonna end up hurting him, or actually hurted him in 2020.
Yeah, that, and I think also he, to analyze the failures of Trump's campaign, I think that he blew the first debate. In my opinion, I think he did pretty well in the second debate, and I remember me and Purple Political Talk, we talked to the night after the debate, and we agreed that Trump won the second debate. But I think the first debate, Trump really blew it. And, Biden didn't really have a strong performance. It's just that he looked more presidential than Trump. And in a time of crisis, I think Americans are more drawn to presidential candidates than, Trump, who was being super chaotic on that debate stage.
Right.
And, I mean, Joe Biden is not that good of a debater. Trump could have attacked him on so many things, like his oil policy. He could have tied him to not even socialism, because he did that. He could have tied him to, big corporations, which Americans, as we know, especially in the Midwest, they really don't like. So Trump blew the first debate, and I think that if he'd done better in the first debate, again, like you said, check out his video. If Trump did 1% better, he could have potentially won the election.
Just to quickly interject, and I think we cannot forget Chris Wallace's performance in that debate. I mean, that was the most painful debate to watch in my life, because I felt that it was a three-way debate where Chris Wallace was debating both candidates because he lost control of the debate. You guys should remember this live stream if you've been with me since before the election. And you can actually just go back and actually check my live stream when you got my cold, hard thoughts, like right after that debate. Trust me, that was complete ridiculous, and I was going insane during that that after that debate.
Yeah, that was what a time. And and at my school, a lot of apolitical students were going crazy because the debate was insane. If one good thing kind of came out of this crazy election was that more people got politically involved, which is always a good thing.
Yeah, I think that in a way, this election has, when things become polarizing, people are gonna when something is controversial, everyone wants to put out their opinion. I do remember clearly I live in Miami-Dade County, Florida, so in the 2020 election, it was pretty much a swing county in a way. I remember the heated political post on Instagram. Everyone would go insane, and then if you posted something that pissed some people, lost friendships over stuff like that. And I think that's something that was ridiculous. I mean, and that's one of the things that moving forward, I think the country has to fix. I don't care if you're a Democrat, Republican, Green Party, Independent, whatever. People have to learn how to be more, civil when they react to other people's posts. If you just go on Twitter and see some of the ridiculous things that people do and say, like I was saying unfortunately with Mike Enzi, that people were just saying some despicable things about Mike Enzi just because they disagree with him. And I think that, people in this country have to learn how to be civil, how to be respectful, and share their opinions in a regular conversation.
I could not agree more. I could not agree more with you on that, and it's really unfortunate the amount of I think gaslighting we see. Even on Twitter, and I like Twitter. I think it's good for news. I think it's good to be on Twitter. For a lot of reasons, but there are a lot of people, and to bring back to what we talked about at the beginning of the stream, Senator Mike Enzi passed away, and there are a lot of people on Twitter saying, who are, left wingers saying that he deserved it because he was a Republican. No, that's not, you can't say that someone deserved to die because of their political views. That's taking it too far, and I think, that can be considered hate speech, and I really think that it's unfortunate that it happens in America.
Right, and I mean, let me give you an example. I despise someone like Rashida Tlaib, right? I don't like her. But, if she were to pass away, of course you're gonna treat them with dignity and respect, because I mean, we might have disagreed on certain policies and stuff like that. You have to be respectful and also acknowledge, well, there's other viewpoints out there. So I do think that that's something that some people do fail to see, and I think it's very sad. So UP, do you want to just start taking questions from the chat, and just do a couple of like a Q&A type thing?
Sure, we can start the Q&A portion of the stream. It's almost 5:30 my time. It's 8:30 on the East Coast where PPT lives. We'll put some questions in the chat. We'll answer them. Okay, let us see.
Yeah, I mean, Political Breakout is saying something that also reminds me when Trump got COVID. People wishing him to that was insane.
Yeah, that was actually because I remember I was listening to the radio I usually listen to because I was listening to some. It was a post game show of I think a Seahawks game, and I heard the commentator saying he wanted Trump to die, and I stopped listening to that radio station because if you know me, I didn't support Trump the 2020 election, but especially when he's the president, you cannot call for the president to die, and that's really unfortunate that happens. All right, let's see.
Let me see. Tell me
questions in the chat.
So I've seen that. Okay, let's see. Okay, I want to talk about this comment. You can see on your screen, right?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so video on future swing states. I don't know when I'm going to be able to get to that, but let's just talk about it right now. So in the future, I think there's certainly going to be swing states. I think Texas, Georgia, Arizona are states that are going to be swing states to stay pretty much. Those are going to be swing states that, they're going to be there for a while. Maybe I think states like Oregon and Washington that have been some, or in Minnesota as well, they could start trending a little bit more bad. And then I would say a lot of states down south, like South Carolina and other southern states could end up being more blue. What do you think, UEP?
So I actually disagree with this, and I usually agree with you, but I think that what you said about Georgia, so I think Arizona and Georgia are different. So people say that Arizona's going to be the next Virginia. I think Arizona's kind of like the next maybe Nevada, and that the Democrats are going to keep gaining in the Phoenix suburbs, which they have been doing, and they're going to keep winning Phoenix and Tucson, obviously, which are the two largest cities, and they're going to do all right, the mid-sized cities like Prescott, Yuma. I'm trying to think of some other mid-sized, other than the Phoenix suburbs, you have Prescott, Yuma, and Flagstaff, really. And then the Phoenix suburbs, Mesa, Scottsdale, Carefree, etc. The Democrats are improving there, and they've been doing well there in the past. And they've been doing well there. In 2020, Joe Biden did very well there. But the Republicans are making gains with Hispanics, and you can actually see the party registration data. And I wish that actually, I have it on my phone, actually, which is here. But I'll pull it up in a second and I'll actually turn on my camera. I guess I can share it with you guys. But essentially, the Democrats are gaining the most in Maricopa County, which is big because it's the largest county and because it is helpful for them, and it's a swing county. But what they do have going against them is the Hispanics in the South trended towards Trump. And, the Democrats would have won Georgia by more in 2020 if they did better with Hispanics. And, Joe Biden could have won Arizona by a Mark Kelly margin, which is 2.4% if he did better with Hispanics, because Kelly did obviously outrun Joe Biden with Hispanics. But realistically speaking, I think Hispanics are going to kind of stay the same in that they're shifting Republican, but it really comes down to where they live. So rural Hispanics are shifting Republican, but suburban Hispanics are shifting Democrat. But overall, it's a slight Republican shift, I guess. Now, Georgia, I would say, is a state that the Republicans are kind of going to be screwed in for a while because unlike Arizona, Georgia does not have a massive population of voters that the Republicans can swing to the right. They have some rural voters, but the Republicans have basically maxed out their support in rural areas. They have a very small Hispanic population, but that's not enough to swing an election, right? Because the largest minority in Georgia, as we know, are black voters, which make up 32% of Georgia's population, and in 2020 they made up 28% of the electorate. Democrats have been, I wouldn't say they're improving with black voters, but they're doing pretty well with black voters. They're doing well enough to win elections in Georgia.
They're staying consistent, if not moderately a little bit less, but they're winning suburban voters.
And that's what I'm getting to, because Atlanta's a big enough city that the Democrats can get, even if they do really poorly in the suburbs, Atlanta's a big enough city to get the Democrats 45% of the vote in Georgia. Now, the reason that Joe Biden won it was because he did so well in the suburbs. Gwinnett County, Cobb County, Henry County, and Newton County are the big four I talk about in my videos. And, Mitt Romney won all these counties, I believe, except for one. He won, and here's a good example. Gwinnett has 1 million people, almost. Mitt Romney won it by 9. Joe Biden carried it by, I think, 18%, and the runoff to the Democrats carried it by over 20. So these are, and these are big counties. Gwinnett, like I said, has 900,000 people. These are big counties that can swing elections. So I think that in Georgia, the suburbs are going to keep it blue, and I think that for this reason, the GOP is kind of in trouble in Georgia. But in Arizona, they can win it if they continue their improvements with Hispanics. So there's going to be a lean Democrat, like I said, kind of like Nevada, a lean Democrat state to come. And hold on really quickly. I'll let Purple talk, and I'm trying to find the map of party registration in Arizona.
So in a certain way, the thing that's happening in Georgia is similar to what's happening in Florida, where we see Miami-Dade County completely go these suburban, and Miami-Dade County is mostly a suburban county. So when you have those suburbs completely flip from the Democrats, what's going to end up happening? Well, I mean, it's going to be more solidified for the Republicans. Same thing happened. Let me see, and let me try find another question, because I think we have to kind of like, move a little quicker with the questions, because if not, we're going to get buried in the chat. Let's see. Let's see. We have, you can just, I don't know if you have the map yet, but the results from Texas 6th congressional district. As a matter of fact, I actually don't have those pulled up. Let me actually look at New York Times, Texas 06 results. Hopefully they have it. Yes, I think they do. Special election. Sorry about that, guys. I'm trying to find them.
Yeah, so in the New York Times, I'll give you the update. We haven't seen, it was last updated 29 minutes ago, and Jake Ellzey still has a 7-point lead. He's leading 53.4% to Susan Wright, 46.6%. It looks like my prediction for this race is not going to age very well, as I did actually have Susan Wright winning by 9%, which is not good for me. But Jake Ellzey currently winning by 7.
I can share the screen. I found the website. Hold on.
Cool.
This is like a general election, but they have jungle primaries here, or is it just a Republican primary?
So essentially, this is a runoff. This is a runoff from the May 1st election that happened with Janice Sanchez, Susan Wright, and Jake Ellzey. And Janice Sanchez, the Democrat, had a really disappointing performance. She came in 3rd behind Wright and Ellzey, which was a really disappointing performance for Democrats.
I thought that Susan Wright was going to win just because we saw in the Louisiana race where the widow just came on and took the seat, which I think is something. Oh, hold on. I have to share my screen. I have to put it in the stream. Let's, okay, let me just put the thing in spotlight. I guess that works. Let me turn the comment off so you guys can see the screen. Oh, God. You can see the screen, right?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay. So, taking a look at what we have right now. Sorry, I'm looking away from the camera. 53.44. Yeah, you were saying that how much of the vote is reporting? They don't have that data, right?
It doesn't look like they have it. It says that there are 19,000 total votes reported. I'm guessing that they're going to be around 30,000 votes cast. So I'd say maybe 60% of the vote reporting, but that's a UEP estimate.
That's a big lead. I think Jake Ellzey's probably going to end up winning. So that's kind of what we're looking at. Yeah.
And it really came to the turnout because Wright was much more well known, but I guess Ellzey, if he wins, it's because he did a better job of getting his base to turn out.
Oh God, let me just bring that back where we had it before. There we go. So yeah, sorry for the technical difficulties. Let's go back to the chat. Let's see.
I'm still looking for that map. I'm looking through my tech chain with myself, where I send myself cool stuff I see on the internet, and I'm looking for it, but it doesn't seem like I can find it, unfortunately.
I wanna ask you guys something in the chat. Do you guys think that moving forward, the Republicans will elect more Trump-like Republicans, or there's going to be certain districts where they're going to choose to run more moderate, like Kissinger, oh my gosh, why am I forgetting here?
Maria Elvira Salazar, I know you. She's from your area.
Yeah, she's great. She's like, I like her a lot. I think in a certain way they should start running like district. If they see that a district like in the Midwest, they should just run a bunch of Trump like candidates. But when you start getting into the Sun Belt, they need to run Maria Elvira Salazar style candidates. They should start running more women. And I think that the identity politics really paid off for the GOP in
Yeah,
20.
fun fact, in 2020, all of the GOP's House pickups came from either minorities, so black representatives like Burgess Owens, or women. So Maria Elvira Salazar picked up a seat. Ashley Hinson in Iowa picked up a seat. Carlos Jimenez is a minority, a Hispanic male. So the GOP does better when they run minorities in most areas.
Right, because I think that one of the things we can't forget is that with how the mainstream media has made a lot of these racist things, like the races, they're really making sure that there is diversity, and they've made it in the way, and I've been studying this for a psychology class I have, that pretty much like there is certain types of biases that many groups of people are trying to like input to make sure that there's more diversity and things like that. And I think for the suburban American, even just like white suburban Americans, they would rather see a minority because of the identity side of politics, which I'm not a personal believer of identity politics. I'm a Hispanic. I just believe whoever's the better candidate is the better candidate. And I don't think that people should be looking, the party shouldn't be like exploiting people's races for political purposes. But, I think at the end of the day, that's what ends up happening because it's just what wins elections, unfortunately.
Yeah. Let's see. Sadly we do not have any updates from the runoff. Georgia official says, "What if David Perdue did 1% better? He would be in the Senate right now. I'll tell you that."
Yeah. Well, I remember. Okay, talking a little bit about nostalgia. Like, which election night was more nostalgic for you, Georgia or like actual election night?
Georgia, because that was a week before my midterm exams.
I remember 2020 election night, but I remember since I was live, like it wasn't the same like watching CNN feeling. Like one of my longtime traditions, and I mean for the only like a couple elections I've been like able to actually remember, the tradition is always turn on CNN and do something, right? Just sit around, watch election results. And it was actually really fun this time because it was something different. And I actually enjoyed having people in the chat discussing with everyone like all the things that were going on. The other election night I do remember like clearly doing live. We did that New York City election night, which most of you should remember the New York City election night, and then also the Massachusetts election night was really fun when Joe Kennedy tried to run because of his name. Last name was Kennedy, but
yeah, he did not. That was a big enough performance as well. By the way, just a minor update on the Texas 6th District election. So, Susan Wright just got some good news. In the Navarro County early vote, which is the smallest county, so it doesn't have too much of an impact, but it's worth noting, she won the early vote by 10%, and they have yet to report their data yet. So it's going to tighten up a little bit, but the question is, how big of a turnout did Navarro have? And we don't know that yet.
Okay, let's see. Important question right here. We see, will Andy Beshear lose re-election in 2023 for Kentucky governor? I'm not sure yet. I mean, since he's more of
he's done, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, he's in a conservative state, so he's a Democrat, and I think moving forward it's going to be really hard. It's going to be something that he's going to have to run a very good campaign to win, and I think it's going to be pretty hard.
Yeah.
Rare disagree with UEP and PPT and the chat on being forced to respect politicians. I mean, when politicians are wrong, you definitely are supposed to call them out. I mean, but you also have to, have some form of respect in a way because, they're the leaders of the country. And I mean, if it wasn't for a lot of these politicians, they're not humble because they want attention, but for them being, what I'm trying to say is that them not just running away with the country and doing whatever the hell they want is something I think we should respect.
Yeah, so actually, and I want to clarify this, You don't have to respect politicians. You have to treat them with decency and when they die, respect them. Because you can't act like when someone dies, you can just, for example, if someone's kid dies, you can't just go up to the top of the funeral saying he bullied me when I was in third grade. That's, even if you're not wrong, it's ridiculous, and I think everyone knows better. So I think you don't have to respect the person, but I think you should have the decency to, if you don't have anything nice to say, just don't say it after their death.
Right. They're not above everyone else, right? But they're like, I guess.
Yeah, and the same goes for anyone else who dies.
Right. It's just mainstream, right?
Yeah, and like in like a friend or something.
Okay, let's see. UEP, is there anything you want to bring up?
Let's see. Do we have any questions in the chat? Here's a good one. How can Herschel Walker win against Warnock in 2022? So, originally I was high on Herschel Walker. I said that if he ran, Georgia would become a toss-up. Now, since then, I've kind of become not high on his chances, I guess, because he was accused of holding a gun to his wife's head and saying, "I'm going to blow your brains out," which is obviously, if that's true, it's very bad. And he was also accused, again, of domestic abuse against his wife. So if these are true, these are allegations that could sink. And we've seen this before. We've seen, recently in 2012 in Indiana, the Republicans blew a Senate race there because their candidate said that, rape was natural. He didn't exactly say that. I'm paraphrasing, but he did say that rape, if it happens, is God's will, which I think really did. A lot of people did not like the tune of that, and and he lost that race by 6%. So people have blown races like this, winnable races, by saying stupid things. And Herschel Walker obviously did not kill his wife. If he did, he'd be in jail. But he did allegedly put a gun to her head, which is disqualifying in my opinion. Now, if those are true, I don't know. Only God knows. But that's good. That's gonna be something that's gonna haunt him if he does run, and he hasn't even announced yet. So I think if he did run, he'd still lose by 3 or 4%. The GOP's best shot in Georgia is Doug Collins, but he said he's not gonna run. So I think that Warnock, for now, I think he's gonna win.
Doug Collins. Oh my gosh, I can't say Doug Collins names. Doesn't make my life, but Doug Collins, I think, is someone who's actually a strong candidate. I think they're probably just gonna end up running some other Republican if it's not Doug Collins. I don't want to see Kelly Loeffler run or David Perdue. I mean, I think all of them have announced they're not going to run. But if one of them does, it's going to end up being probably D+3, I would say.
Yeah, David Perdue, if anyone remembers, back in March or April, he actually said he was going to run. And 2 weeks later was actually, no, I'm not going to run. That was pretty funny. Although Kelly Loeffler was still considering it, apparently.
I think that the way that things played out, I think that it was going to be easier I think that in a way, Jon Ossoff was a little bit of a harder candidate to beat for Perdue, but in a way it wasn't as well because Raphael Warnock has that appeal with African-American voters. But I just think that if you were to put the top tier candidates together, I think it just ended up being I always saw Jon Ossoff as a stronger candidate. I say this mostly because as a political future, Jon Ossoff is just more brighter since he's been coming up, and we've heard more about him. That's what I'm trying to say. It was the famous people race against not so well known.
Right. Okay. Let's see what else we have in the chat. Hold on. I'm gonna go on mute for 1 second. You can take up the stream for a second.
Let me see. Progressive Rising. This is actually a very good question. Chris Kobach is running for Kansas AG. Should a Democrat win the Kansas AG? I mean, I'm not going to see if they should or shouldn't, but I'm just going to say Chris Kobach is insanely unpopular. I mean, just he blew a governor's race that was pretty much going to be safe Republican, if not likely Republican. So if the Democrats lose here, I wouldn't be win here, I wouldn't be surprised, and if they lose, I wouldn't be surprised either. So yeah. Let's see. Is Mandela Barnes a good recruit against Ron Johnson in 2022? Is he the best candidate the Democrats can nominate? And would the Democrats do better or worse if Johnson retires? So I can answer the last question with absolute certainty. The Democrats' best interest is that Ron Johnson retires without a doubt. I think that with Ron Johnson, people underestimate him in certain ways, and I think that he's actually a stronger candidate people think. I do think that it's just beneficial. He's just an incumbent. People know him, all that stuff. So I think that Ron Johnson is a stronger candidate. Now, I think Angela Barnes is also a good recruit. I don't really think that the Wisconsin Democrats are as strong as Ron Johnson, but if Ron Johnson retires, you can consider that race probably going to be lean Democrat. I wouldn't say it's probably going to go in the likely margin, but it's going to be close. But I do think that the Democrats would win.
Yeah. So just to talk about this race a little bit. So I have an unpopular opinion on this race. I think that Sarah Godlewski is a better candidate than Mandela Barnes. Now, I get that Barnes is the lieutenant governor, but on his own, he has not won statewide. He is only a statewide position because he ran the same ticket as Tony Evers, who did win statewide. That's why I think Tony Evers ran. It would be a different story. Godlewski won her treasurer's race by 4.6%, I believe. I could be wrong, but I think it's around 4%. That means she ran ahead of Tony Evers. Obviously, she ran behind Tammy Baldwin, but Tammy Baldwin is an electoral juggernaut, and if she ran, the race would be over for Republicans. But she did pretty well. She ran ahead of Biden. Obviously, she did fairly well in 2018. Now, Wisconsin did still vote in her race, I think, 4 or 5% to the right of the nation, which, not great. But it's still more winnable than I think with Mandela Barnes. Now, I could be wrong, and Barnes isn't a bad candidate. I just think that, if I'm the Wisconsin Democrats, I think I'd prefer Sarah Godlewski to be my nominee because she has one statewide and because I think she has better blue-collar appeal than Mandela Barnes.
Right. I mean,
it just, by the way, really quickly, sorry to interrupt, but it really comes down to regional, I guess, from where people are from where they're from. Sarah Godlewski is from Eau Claire, which is a kind of a small working class town in the middle of Wisconsin. It's near it's north of La Crosse. It's kind of near the border with Minnesota. If you know where that is, Google it, or if you know where it is, cool. If you don't, Google it. Mandela Barnes is from Milwaukee, so he has great appeal to Milwaukee voters, and I think he'd get them out to vote for him. But Hillary Clinton, she didn't lose Wisconsin because she did bad in Milwaukee or Madison. She lost Wisconsin because, as we know, it always goes down. She lost the working class, and I think Godlewski would do better with the working class than Biden or Clinton.
Right. I do think that with these Midwestern races, the Democrats, again, I think that this is something moving forward they're going to probably see. When we're talking about races the Democrats could blow, I think the Midwest has the choose me sticker right smack from middle center of those races, because I think that in the Midwest is a place where the Democrats could be blowing a lot of races just based on the candidates they run. And I think that the Republicans and the way they appeal more, it's just that I think the Midwest itself, I would say is still tilt to lean red. It's just that Biden won there because Trump was unpopular. I mean, you have seen some races that did go to the Democrats in the midterms, but I do think that it's probably, I would say right now, politically to toss up. I mean, I don't think it tilts Democrat just yet. They just won the presidency because and very narrowly at that, because Trump was just so unpopular and a lot of people did not want to see Trump himself on the ticket because of his rhetoric. And I think truly Trump's rhetoric ended up catching up to him.
That is true. Let's see what else we have in the chat. Do you think that Rob Portman would beat Sherrod Brown in Ohio? He would. It would be. I think he'd win by 5 or 6. In Ohio, Brown's a good candidate, and I think he's narrowly favored in 2024 as of right now. But Portman's still really strong. And there's also some speculation about who some potentially good candidates are in Wisconsin for the Democratic Party. Someone said Ron Kind would be a slam dunk. Yeah, he's the representative from the working class 3rd district. That he actually represents a Trump district, and he won as a Democrat. So he's got that going for him. So he'd be a good candidate. Tom Wolf in Pennsylvania would be another good candidate. He would do pretty well, I think. If he were to run. So, but again, those people are not likely to run.
I mean, I think that it would just be better for Tom Wolf for him to throw his hat in the ring in the Senate race and just tell Fetterman to take over the governorship. I just think that would be the smartest thing to do for the Democrats. I'm not completely sold on John Fetterman yet. I don't think that he has the charisma to run that campaign. Because remember, it's also about excitement. You could have a strong candidate on paper, but if you don't know how to go out campaigning, actually get people excited to come out and vote, it's not worth anything, right?
Yeah, so like in my opinion, I think Pennsylvania is kind of like a hot mess right now in their Senate race, where that both parties have it in them to win this race, but they're both kind of like squandering it. And that John Fetterman is an okay candidate, but the Democrats, like if they ran Madeline Dean, Matt Cartwright,
Connor Lamb.
Connor Lamb, I think, and Tom Wolf, I think they could be winning this race by 5 or 6%, but they're not doing that, and they're likely to run John Fetterman. It's either him, Kenyatta, or Arkush. Kenyatta and Arkush don't have any recognition that Fetterman has, and Fetterman's not a bad candidate. He doesn't have a ton of he has a minor scandal, but I'll talk about that in a second. But I still think he's okay. But like you said, he doesn't have great charisma. He's not as energetic. He has appeal to working class voters for sure, but he's just not energetic. So on paper, he's a good candidate, but can he get voters out to vote? That'll be a big test for him. And also, like I said earlier, he does have a minor scandal. He allegedly held a gun to a man's head because he thought he was a criminal. And the man later went to jail, I believe. But the interesting thing is that the guy wrote a letter from jail endorsing Fetterman, saying that he thought he was a good man. So, think of that what you will. But interesting that Fetterman would be endorsed by someone that, caused him a scandal. But I think Fetterman right now, if it's like Fetterman versus Parnell for that race, I think Fetterman would narrowly win. But he's not an ideal candidate, and I think he still has some issues that he needs to address as a candidate before I say that he's favored to win his race for sure.
Right. I think that in Pennsylvania, we're looking at a race that's going to be interesting just because of how big of a hot mess it is. I think like another race that a lot of people don't tend to talk about is like the race in North Carolina. I think that's actually going to be pretty close. I do think that Ted Budd at this point probably has a little bit over Cherry Beasley, but mostly based on the I would say on the appeal that he has, and he's more charismatic. Cherry Beasley is a good candidate, but I think that, and she has some charisma, but I think she could end up losing to someone like Ted Budd in that race.
Yeah, North Carolina is an underrated target for Democrats, but I still think at the end of the day they're going to have another close loss there.
Do you guys want to hear a song that I made and I sing when I'm bored?
I highly recommend it.
Okay, ready? Political bombs, bum, bum, bum. So it's pretty much the MSNBC theme, like mixed up with like a purple political talk and purple political moms type thing. Tell me what you guys think down in the chat. Do you guys like it?
Guys, spam PPT is based in the chat if you think the song is good, because I think it's a really good song. And it's yes. 1 a 10-second delay. But okay, guys, spam PPT is based in the chat.
Oh, look, we're seeing the clap.
There's a clapping.
Thank you. Okay,
guys, spam it in the chat.
Let me see. I want to go back to one of them. I saw a question right here. Hold on. Amy Klobuchar 2024. I think she could actually win in 2024. Amy Klobuchar is just such a likable person, and I think that, and I've said this in the past to UEP that I think that when Al Franken was senator, like Minnesota had the most likable Senate delegation in the history of the world. Like Amy Klobuchar and Al Franken are just two of the most likable people ever. I think if she ran, she would probably end up winning the race.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do agree, but that was before Franken had a scandal, obviously. And Tina Smith is not an unlikable politician. She is not as loud or as funny as Franken or Klobuchar were. We also see in the chat someone said that the Texas 6 race is tightening, only by a little bit though. It only narrowed by I think 2 points. It's down to a 6-point lead for Susan Wright or for Jake Ellsworth. Let's see.
Okay. I want to talk about my home state of Florida for a little bit because I think that moving forward, Florida is a state that it's going to be interesting to watch. I think that moving forward, I think that the Republicans have somewhat of an idea of what's going to happen. I do think that Ron DeSantis, if he runs for president, if he does so successfully, he would, be president. If he doesn't, I think he just might retire, maybe in the future, run for some House seat again. Although, I mean, after being governor, I think going back to the House of Representatives is
that'd be weird.
Well, I mean, Charlie Crist did that, so it's not completely out of the realm of possibility. I do think that someone who could possibly replace Ron DeSantis in the governor's mansion in the future is either his lieutenant, Janet Nunez, which is actually a very strong Republican woman. I think Maria Elvira Salazar would be the best pick for that. I think, though, that the best thing for Maria Elvira Salazar to do is just for wait until like either Rubio or Scott retires in a couple years. I think Scott's probably going to retire soon. Probably like in 2 or 3 terms. Well, that's still 18 years, but yeah, I do think that she could probably run for a Senate seat or gubernatorial seat in the future.
Yeah, she'd be really good she'd be kind of like Marco Rubio in that she might run a little behind Trump in rural areas, but she'd do really well in the suburbs and in Miami-Dade. And I think it's underrated that Florida, we might, and I'm not suggesting that Florida is going to be blue anytime soon, because I think it's going to stay kind of lean Republican for, kind of a while, I guess. But I do think that, we could see kind of a coalition change, and that Democrats are going to start, in the past they've, done well by running it up in Miami-Dade or, those areas. They might start to, kind of shift their strategy to areas like Pinellas County or Duval County, because Duval most people don't know this, but Duval is a very big county. It's big enough to house a congressional district, and it's, a county that the Democrats have made a lot of inroads in as of late. Joe Biden won the county. It was a Trump county in 2016, and the Democrats did very well there in 2018 as well. So Democrats have been, doing pretty well there. And, if they can continue that, they can make up for maybe potential lost votes in Miami-Dade with gained votes in Duval County or in Pinellas County, Seminole County, and they can continue to make gains in smaller counties as well, or maybe some more rural counties, because the Panhandle in Florida is pretty maxed out for the GOP. So, like, if the Democrats start to gain in smaller towns like Pensacola, I guess mid-sized cities, not smaller.
Mid-sized cities, right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, they're rather smaller cities because, like,
yeah, or like Fort Myers, I guess.
Those are mid-sized to small cities like Fort Myers, Sarasota. Those are actually big growing areas, and I think if the Democrats can make more inroads, especially I think like Southwest Florida is a very growing area. You have like Naples, Sarasota, Fort Myers. As you go up to like St. Petersburg, that's more of like a moderately more bigger city. It's connected to Tampa. It's a Tampa suburb. And then on the other coast, I mean, it's also pretty strong for the Republicans. I just do think that moving forward, like I would say that the best candidate, and I don't think they would even win in Florida, would be running Gwen Graham. And trust me, if Gwen Graham, I think she was running for governor, she had won that nomination, she would be DeSantis. Yeah, she would be the governor of Florida. And I love how it ended up being that the two like long shot candidates for the races ended up being the winners in the primaries. Like, do you remember that in 2018 we thought that Adam Putnam and Gwen Graham was going to be the Florida governor race?
Yeah, go back to the old LT election nights in like summer 2020 or 2018. It was all about how it was Gwen Graham versus Adam Putnam and how Gwen Graham was going to win that race, and it did not turn out that way.
Right. Hold on. Let's see. Harold Brick says, really, the only bright spot for the Dems in Florida are Jacksonville, Orlando, Treasure Coast metro areas. So I do agree with that. I think that they're making some gains in Orlando, and Orlando is growing immensely fast. I wouldn't be surprised if they added the congressional district they're adding in Orlando. And like I think that, yeah, that's one of the regions of the state that's actually growing the fastest. So yeah.
Really quickly, speaking of Florida, there's been a bit of discourse, I guess, on Twitter and YouTube as well, but the GOP they're considering axing the 5th District, which, those of you who don't know, the 5th District is the snake district that runs across Tallahassee up to Jacksonville. It's a majority black district, I believe, and it serves as a VRA district. And there's been talk about the GOP getting rid of it because it would be a gain for them because they're going to have the ability to gerrymander the state. That just tweeted out, not likely to happen because they can't really draw another majority black seat. They need, I think, 2. They have one, I think, in Miami, which is Alcee Hastings, and then the other one was this seat, the 5th District that they're not gonna get rid of because they it would be illegal. And also, for the record, I think that it would be a dumb move because they'd be putting Tallahassee in one district that would be like the Republicans would win it by like 5 or 6, and with Gwen Graham running in that district, she could flip it. So I think the GOP is going to keep that district.
I do think that their best move is to gerrymander Miami-Dade. So the districts that they have right now, they stay Republican, and they're probably going to end up drawing a district that kind of they're going to draw one big district that puts most of Broward County together. So I think they're going to end up keeping they're going to cut off Wasserman Schultz districts and make sure they have a little bit more space to work with to gerrymander it with the west side of the state. I do think that it's just in their favor and for the Republicans' favor to make sure they maximize the gerrymandering with like the easiest way to gerrymander Miami-Dade is just to connect it with Collier County.
Yeah, I mean, like, if you want to draw out a Democrat, that's what you can do. And they're also likely to, and like, the Republicans have the luxury of being able to essentially only solidify, like, because Carlos Jimenez and Maria
So
Elvira Salazar, thank you, are in Biden or are in Democratic leaning districts. You know, Clinton won them in 2016, Gillum and Nelson won them in 2018. Biden narrowly lost them, but they're in Democratic leaning districts, generally speaking. They're strong incumbents. You know, Jimenez was the mayor of Miami-Dade County. He's very well liked by a lot of Democrats there, and that's why he beat David Marcus Powell.
yeah.
Maria Elvira Salazar is a well-liked moderate politician who has a lot of support from both sides of the aisle, and that's why she beat out, to surprise many people. Most people had a safety. I had it as likely D. I think even Purple got this wrong. Donna Shalala. So they have the GOP has the luxury of having two very strong incumbents there that they don't have to necessarily put in safe Republican districts to make them safe in their seats, because they can run ahead of other Republicans and do better. So that's the Florida Republicans have a lot of strong incumbents. They managed to hold on to a lot of seats that they haven't, that they wouldn't be able to in other states. And it's just a party thing. It's because the Florida Republican Party very good at winning elections. Florida Democrats not so much.
Mm-hmm. I think that the interesting thing about Salazar's district is that it stretches a very diverse, it's a very diverse district, because you have like a more elite part of the like Miami, which is like the Coral Gables part of her district, and then you start getting into more of the what you call like little Havanas in your district. So like you get into like those more like ethnic Cuban neighborhoods, which really do favor her. So I think that they need to end up just splitting like that district, maybe like drawing into ways so like parts of the Keys goes into another district. They're gonna have to do some crazy gerrymandering, but I do think that they're gonna do something there.
Yeah, and I think in Purple, a cool idea. We should totally make a video about Florida redistricting because it is a really important state. But with that being said, it is 6:02 my time, 9:02 Purple's time. We've been on live, or we've been on the air for a little more than an hour, so I'll hand it over to Purple, and we're going to wrap up the stream.
Right. So I want to thank all of you guys for coming. It's always a pleasure, and I'm doing these. I'm going to try to do these weekly. Just a quick announcement. As like school starts again pretty soon. I mean, we're still like a month away, or less than a month away. I'm gonna probably like lower the frequency of live streams, and to make sure I have everything balanced. But I will continue to do these, and I might not be able to do one next week because I'm getting my house remodeled. So I actually have some cool stuff for like this wall where I'm gonna build a tentative studio while I work on another big project like regarding the channel, and I'll share you guys when due time is there. But I don't know when we're gonna be. I'll let you guys know with a couple of days in advance, so you guys know. But yeah, so I want to thank all of you guys for watching this video. If so, please give it a huge thumbs. If you enjoyed the video, give it a huge thumbs up. Remember to like, subscribe, and turn on post notifications on this channel, and go over and subscribe to UEP and turn on post notifications on his channel if you have not yet done that. The other thing I did want to say is I want to give a very big thank you to David Maxwell, our Per Political Talk channel member, and yeah, UEP, do you have anything to say before we sign off?
Yeah, I'm going to head out again. Thanks for tuning in. If you haven't already, subscribed to Purple. He's currently at 2.45K subscribers. I think we should get him to 2.5K by the end of the month. That would be really cool. And again, another reason to subscribe and like the video. By the way, everyone, let's get this video to 20 likes. I think we're at 18 or 17 right now. Give it a like because of that amazing song we heard in the middle of the stream. So
political moms.
Yeah, again. And personally, in my opinion, I think we should make it the intro for his videos, but I'm not sure he's ready to do it yet because he's trying to get a producer and a manager for his single that's going to be coming out soon. So subscribe to Purple so you don't miss it.
Selling
like the video.
out
Thank you.
Everywhere across the nation. In a stadium near to you, you're going to be able to hear the Purple Political Talk song. So yeah. Again, thank you guys so much for watching. See you in the next one, and goodbye. Oops, hold on.